Here we go. I am so excited for today's conversation. It has been a long time in the making. It is with Paul. Paul, I can't even say your last name. This is like I'm already failing you as a podcast host. But I confuse it with Worcestershire sauce, but that is not how you say it. Paul,
it's
how do you say your last name?
technically Worcester, like Worcester, Massachusetts. So it's like an English, name.
Paul, I'm from Louisiana. I've never used a town in Massachusetts as my way to like think it through. Say it again for me one more time.
Worcester. Like Worcester, yeah. My mom actually changed it in high school because our friends would make fun of us. You're like, wuss is like,
Oh, and, no.
And then she told the football announcers, just say Worcester. Woo woo, and then they would go woo woo Worcester, and so now half of my friends call me Worcester, half my friends call me Worcester, and then most people just say Paul. They don't even try my name. Right. So it's all good. And I'm a twin too, so I don't really care what you call me. It's like half the time people are just guessing between my twin and I. So
I love it. So if you know Paul, you've probably you know about his twin brother David. You know a little bit about what he does with NAM. But for those of us that don't, I get the wonderful privilege to introduce you here. Which as I started to dig and okay, let me make sure I've covered all my bases. We don't have enough time to cover all the things. Paul, I feel like you're everywhere. In fact, we were just talking as we were getting ready. Paul just got back from Japan. Are you on the way to Japan? I can't remember.
Yeah, I'm going to Japan. I just got back from Chicago. So a little different, a little less exotic, but
That's right. Well, it's okay. When we first scheduled this, you were in Africa. So, I mean, we're just trying to keep up. But Paul is over Gen Sin with North American Mission Board. He also does equipping and training all around evangelism. He is over, how many podcasts are you a part of, Paul?
3 podcasts I co-host. Yeah, one with my dad, one with my buddy Gary Stidham, and one NAM sponsored one. That's the Gen Send podcast, which I think would be one of the ones to check out for others. So.
Dude, that's awesome. Yes. And if you could send me an evaluation on how I'm doing as a host today, that would be great. I would love it. And so you got
no, we're just making it up as we go as well. So that's kind of don't expect perfection if you jump on my other podcasts. So
that's right. I love it. So you got 3 podcasts there and then also an author. This is really cool. What I think you and I have connected over is you focus a ton with college ministry and you're helping college students and see multiplication and movements happening on college campuses, which is a huge passion of mine. Actually started when I was getting discipled in my freshman year. I had the guy who was discipling me, and he gave us a couple of books. He gave me 2 books that I remember. He gave me Master Plan of Evangelism by Robert Coleman. Legendary, right?
Yes.
I think we could probably say that Replicate as a whole probably sits on the foundation of the Bible and then Master Plan of Evangelism in terms of just influences. Second one though was The Fuel and the Flame. Steve Sadrak, which now, as you go look at it, it looks so much prettier than when I got it as a college student, and it has your name on it. Okay, so tell us real quick the story behind you and Steve writing The Fuel and the Flame. It's this kind of updated version. What's the book about? That's not what we're going to talk about today, but that's definitely the coolest connection because that was my freshman year of college.
Yeah, funny thing enough, I read the original Fuel and the Flame my sophomore year of college, and it really transformed my vision for disciple making. And also to be in the same sentence as Master Plan of Evangelism, I could just retire right now. That's amazing.
That's right.
But for many years, The Fuel and the Flame became the go-to book for both collegiate leaders and students. But Shad even told me, Steve Shadrach, he talked about how it was kind of half written for staff, half for students. And his heart was just to write one just for students. So he brought me in and to kind of rewrite the whole thing. We got together, made completely new chapters. So it's a completely different book, but it has a lot of the same content. And then we took the staff-focused content, and we're actually in the midst of writing a second book that's for collegiate ministry staff that's more on that level. And so that's a prayer request. We're getting that finished up. And so we're super excited. Think of it almost like the collegiate version of Movement Ready Church, kind of like a lot of those same principles. And so that's
It's
kind
even
of
called
exciting.
Ministry to Movement. Is that
Yep.
the
Yep.
working title?
That's the working title right now. So definitely
Hey,
focus on that movement, spiritual multiplication aspect of things.
I
So
love that. And I think that's today's conversation really excited to talk around multiplication is a huge passion of ours, evangelism, obviously, and then the college ministry, what you're seeing on college campuses and everything there. So super excited. Let's actually start since we're reliving the college days. And so let's start there. Uh, I'm curious, what first drew you to actually focus in on college ministry and college students?
yes, that's a great question. I was at University of Oklahoma, was part
I
of the
didn't know that.
Baptist. Yeah,
Boomer
yeah,
Sooner?
yes, Boomer Sooner.
Okay.
Yeah, I grew up in Southern California, kind of random that I ended up at University of Oklahoma. But the director, longtime director, he was on campus 37 years. Max Barnett is his name, and he is a legendary disciple maker. That man, he would be a great guy to bring on the podcast as well. But man, he out of just about any collegiate leader that I know that's alive today has made the greatest impact. They counted over 100 other collegiate ministries have been planted from men and women that Max discipled, and that's
Wow.
just the stateside collegiate ministry. There's missionaries all over the world that this University of Oklahoma Baptist Collegiate Ministry just became a launch pad to the nations just all over. So my twin brother and I got discipled by Max his very last year before he retired. He ended up doing a bunch of other ministry stuff after, but I feel zero pressure to be productive with my life. Okay. But he just sat down with my brother and I. First week he handed me a little verse card. And on one side it said 1 Corinthians 10:31. On the other side, he made me write it down. So whether you eat or drink or whatever you do it all for the glory of God. And he said, hey, memorize this verse. I took it home. And the whole reason I memorized that verse the first week was just because I didn't want to be the twin that didn't have his verse
Mhm.
memorized.
That's right. You were looking at
But
David and seeing how well he was progressing, and you're
yeah,
like, "Golly."
exactly. And that's the beauty of discipleship groups is that
That's right.
peer-to-peer accountability, you know. But after 5 weeks of memorizing a verse a week, my mind was like being completely transformed. It was like
Mm,
clean water washing out a dirty cup. It was just like
mhm.
Romans, 12:2. Do not conform any longer to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And so that one semester, the spring semester as a freshman in college, completely transformed the trajectory of my life just through someone personally discipling me. And so my vision now is just to do that same thing to and help as many college students as possible have that same experience that I did. So really, that's my heart is just to see. I think college students, young adults, they're at the best stage of life for disciple making. I mean, let's get them sooner with youth ministry, of course, but I think young adults, college students, they're at such a formative time, and that's often a gap that the church is missing in their intentionality in disciple making. So that's where
Yeah,
I see it's a very strategic point to kind
yeah.
of focus on.
Yeah, I'd love for you to share more on that because I think experientially, so my story is actually very similar. I grew up in the church and then I went to college and I learned all about what discipleship was. Like, I didn't get any of that actually in the church as much that I grew up in. And I started to get discipled, started sharing my faith. And like, I mean, the trajectory of my life changed in that one year. I mean, it was over obviously all 4 years of college, but that first year, everything changed for me as I got in a discipleship group. And so share more about like as you see the how strategic college campuses are and maybe how churches are doing that well and leaning in and maybe where there's neglect.
Yeah, it's strategic not only for Christians that grew up in church, it's the best time to reach a non-Christian adult because
Mm,
people tend to come to Christ in trouble and transition. And the biggest transition in
that's
someone's
good.
life is going off into college. And often you remember when you were a freshman how much perceived trouble is what I call it. It's not like real trouble, but it's like,
Right.
does this girl like me? Do I fit in with this friend group? They are at such a vulnerable place that basically whoever gets to them first is gonna influence them. And so often it's
Wow.
the fraternities, it's the sororities, it's the clubs, it's whatever party scenes going on. And so I think the first 6 weeks that a student goes off to college could be one of the most pivotal and important times in their entire life to set the
Mm,
trajectory of their life. And so churches and college ministries that can focus on that, getting plugging them into healthy community and personal disciple making
yeah,
can really impact that's like the most strategic thing I think to reach the
yeah,
next generation.
yeah,
And they want to be trained. So once they're in your ministry, they have a hunger and a passion that when us guys in our 40s, we're getting tired,
right.
when
That's
we don't
right.
have and we also don't have the extra bandwidth, the time.
Yeah,
A 19-year-old has, even though they think they're busy, they really have all the time in the world to be a part of a discipleship group, to go out and share their faith, to go on mission trips, to really invest, dig that foundation for an
yeah,
entire life of ministry. So if we're thinking big picture and long term, young adults and college students are the most strategic slice. The
yeah.
problem is a lot of churches don't think long term. They think short term and they think, hey, college students don't tithe. They're not going to pay the bills. And so,
That's
how are
fair.
we going to, if you're planting a church, you're kind of like, well, the traditional model of going to the growing suburb and reaching young families and all that
Yeah,
stuff, that's a good way to get sustainable in your finances as a church. But if you're really trying to make a long term kingdom impact that's going to
yeah.
last and it's going to be exponential, I'd say make sure college ministry is in the mix as well. So,
Yeah. No, I love that. And you and I share a great connection with down at LSU, Andrew Riley. So that's
uh-huh.
is the college pastor at a church that I was at for 12 years called the Chapel. And I think that what I love is that church. Actually, when I rolled up to campus before I stepped foot on LSU's property, somebody helped move me in and tell me about, hey, come to, at the time it was Refuge, but come to the chapel. And I got involved in the service. And there's very similar. We sent so many missionaries to go live overseas. I have so many friends in my life now that their whole families and their whole life are going to be overseas reaching the nations. And
Mhm.
it's because at 18 months old, like you said, like, you don't have the family, you don't have the job, you don't have all the other things, like, you can begin to like, it's so much easier to mobilize people, and there's such a hunger for that training, I love that.
Yep.
Hey, one thing you said, you mentioned, t 2 reasons people what'd you say? 2 people lose their faith or step away from their faith: in trouble and transition?
Yeah, and people come to Christ. It's actually people come to Christ in trouble and transition, but it's
Oh,
also true. The opposite is true. What you just said is a lot of people will walk away or drift from faith in trouble and transition as well. So that's why actually it's both, to be
yeah.
honest. So,
That's so
mhm.
good. You just had a much more optimistic view of it than I did.
Yeah.
And so, but
Maybe that's
like,
the evangelist in me trying to just think about how do we reach
that's
the
right.
lost. So,
That's
anyways.
right. I love that. I don't know if you've read it, The Great Dechurching, the book there. So this would be for even if you don't have college ministry at your church. Great Dechurching. I think it said over the last 30 years we've lost 40 million people from the church.
Mhm,
And as
mhm.
they did a survey over the recent years of why people left the church, the number one reason. Do you know what it is? The number one reason they left the church?
No, what is it?
We always think it's spiritual, like real spiritual. It's like they moved.
Yeah. Yep,
The
yep.
number one reason was they just moved and they got out of the rhythms and the relationships and the habit of going to church. And so
Mhm.
like, and the big thing they said is, hey, maybe one of the best things that you could do is just like, have realtors like let them know about church. Maybe it
Mm.
was like, and some of it's just like it's sometimes we play in our minds that it's a bigger deal than it is, but a lot of times people are just transitioning a new place. And if we have a strategic ministry like college that says, as you start new rhythms, why don't you start them with us, with a community that's loving and that is going to pursue Jesus together. So love that. Trouble, transition. Tell us a little bit more around, like, right now as you're around with pastors and on campuses often. What are you seeing right now on college campuses across the nation? Maybe that's giving you hope or is exciting you as you're looking across the landscape.
Yeah, I mean, if you see on the video, I have the revival hat on.
Yeah,
Shane Pritt and I, our tag is revival generation, and when it's not just hype, we really believe that God is up to something.
yeah,
Seeing lots of sparks of revival really across the nation. There are campuses. I could point you to multiple collegiate ministries that have seen over 100 students come to Christ just
Mm.
last school year. So,
Yeah.
like, couple people every week are coming to Christ, and these are small ministries of maybe 200 or under that are seeing just dozens and dozens of students coming to Christ.
That's right.
And it's mainly students reaching other students. And so the best person to reach another student is a student. And so as leaders, as staff and collegiate leaders, pastors, really we have three roles in this movement is to model the lifestyle we're trying to reproduce. And so if students want to grow in their prayer lives, they want to be filled with the Holy Spirit. They're very curious about the Holy Spirit and how to cooperate with Him. They want to share their faith. They want to do all this stuff, but they need models. And so that for me, that's very convicting and something I really have to stop at square one with in my trainings. I do a coaching network with collegiate leaders every year. We take about 200 leaders through it, but we spend a lot of this time on the modeling aspect because you reproduce who you are,
Mm.
and discipleship at the end of the day is monkey see, monkey do. That's it. I could take you to Chico, which I spent 10 years at Chico State in Northern California. And I'm in Hawaii. It's been 5 years I've been in Hawaii, but I could still go back to the average student leader, pluck out the average student leader, and I could almost guarantee they pray, they share the gospel, and they memorize scripture. Why? Because from the very start, my wife and I, no glory to us, we decided that's going to be the DNA of our ministry. We're going to pray, we're going to share the gospel, and we're going to disciple, and we're going to memorize scripture. And students might do what you teach them, but they will do what they see you do. Right.
Yeah.
And so, really, it's modeling, equipping. So that's where you equip simple tools. Students need training wheels, basically, so to speak. They
Yeah.
need they need simple tools, simple processes, and then empowering.
Yeah.
Just let them be on the front lines and get out of the way. So
Yeah.
really, if you want to see a movement of college students, those are the three things you need to focus on: modeling, equipping, and empowering. And you do those
Yeah.
three things, I can almost guarantee you'll see a movement among the students in your ministry.
Yeah. What I love about that, and obviously there's great place for preaching and all those things, but it's like that right there, like if you just do that, like it doesn't, you don't have to have a certain sermon or you don't have to have a certain ministry. Like I think sometimes we can overcomplicate it. And it's like, man, like just model for somebody what you want them to do, the lifestyle you want them to live, give them resources to do it, and then cheer them on and empower them as they go. And I think what's funny is you can see that if you think about how we raise our kids. Like
Mm.
I'm sometimes just like, why don't I do this whenever I'm spiritually trying to, raise an infant, to be able to be an adult? And so love
Wow.
that.
Yeah.
The
Hmm.
tell me when you think about the college stuff, one more before I want to kind of take us a little different direction, but one more around the college. There's some churches obviously that are near a big university campus or a large campus. And I think sometimes like college ministry is like, oh yeah, for sure. This is strategic. This is obvious. Mine would have been that we were literally a 1 acre church on the campus of LSU. Like if you're
Wow.
not
Yeah.
reaching LSU and you're on it, like what are we doing? But I
Hmm.
think there's so many more churches that are in more regional campuses or community colleges, and what college ministry looks there is drastically different.
Right.
What would you say to the church, whether they have the university and they're close by, or it's more community or regional colleges? What would be the encouragement there as pastors and church leaders think about how they can reach the next generation on college campuses?
Wow, I'm so glad you asked that question because it's so easy to hear about the strategic nature of major university campuses and think because you're in a regional town or something that's not within striking distance that you're like less strategic for some reason. But in
Yeah.
many ways, because you're not, if you're in a smaller town or an area that doesn't have a major 4-year college, then you can become a great movement and there's not the other flagship college ministries aren't attracted to
Mm,
your city. So you can kind
yeah.
of become a big fish in a small pond, so to speak.
Yeah.
And actually that's what we're seeing. I live on North Shore of Oahu. And we
That's
partner with a
Hawaii, if anybody
yeah,
needs to know that. That's
yes.
Hawaii. So
Sorry to rub
which
it in.
Paul told me he was closer to Japan than Nashville when we started this call. So
Yeah, yeah. Sorry, someone's got to do it. But it's a
that's
long
right.
story. It does help my wife's health, but yeah, we live on North Shore of Oahu, and it is actually an hour from University of Hawaii, or 45 minutes depending on traffic. And we have tons of young adults at this church. It's a small church, about 300. But out of these 300 people that we have this church partnership with the church here. About 300. There's 300 people at the church. About 100 are young adults,
Mm,
and we've made it a point to intentionally disciple key students and start discipleship groups and train them to share their faith. And it's becoming this mini movement of God that we're seeing on the North Shore of Oahu.
yeah.
Last year, we had 78 baptisms, and we have the beach across the street. Maybe they just want the aesthetic Instagram picture of the nice beach. I was just kidding. No, but we're really seeing God move where almost every week we're seeing young adults come, get saved, and we're trying to plug them into to personal discipleship. And so my encouragement for leaders that are in kind of a less obvious college town is maybe start a college slash young adult ministry and reach that age group, 18 to 25 or 18 to 29. That's kind of those kind of demographics, and just start growing into business. Don't go into business. So start small, start with a small core that you really intentionally disciple, and then equip them to be on the front lines of leading the small group. So you might not even do a big group for everyone in the church right away. You might disciple three or four of them and really get the DNA in their lives, and then equip them to host a community group. And then eventually, if it grows beyond that, 20 or 30, you might do a large group meeting, things like that. But you might never get there. You might just get to this place where you have this really good community group. And then under the surface, you have personal discipleship relationships bubbling up. And you could have a life changing, world changing ministry with, like, as long as you're focused on disciple making. Give me a small college slash young adult ministry of 20 to 30 that's focused on making disciples and multiplying disciples. I'll take that over a mega church that's just all about gathering people
That's
and,
right.
and inspiration any day.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, and I think that's, when we talk about a movement, even that movement ready church, that disciple making culture, like sometimes that dedication of the few, it just looks like don't go and start the big program. Hey, Tuesday night, or hey, here's the college service, but just start doing a couple of discipleship groups and then watch multiplication do its work. And it can start so small. Like I was just at our multiply conference, and somebody's like, okay, I'm ready to go back and do this. Where do I start? I don't have many people. We're not. I was like, do you have three? And she's like, yeah, there's three people. I go, start there. And she's like, wait, that's good enough. I'm like, I mean, sure. Like that's the best place to start is just to like you're saying, model it and then watch it take off.
I do think I was just in India, and my father and I, he's a church planting trainer. We were training this, which they should have been training us, but we were training some leaders from this church planting movement in across northern India, and they just empower almost to a what most people would consider a reckless level. And that has got me to thinking about where movement is taking off on college campuses across the nation. It's where the leaders almost have a reckless level of empowering student leaders to lead. And so
Yeah.
if I was starting a young adult ministry or college ministry at a church, I might not even go to the gathering, but I might
Yeah.
equip these student leaders, these 18-year-olds, 20-year-olds, to lead the Tuesday night small group. And I may or may not come. I would
Yeah.
be tempted to come, but
Yeah.
let them lead anything you can possibly do. So think about being radically college student led or radically young adult led. And I think that'll end up creating the most momentum.
Yeah.
And you may happen faster than you think if you're
Yeah.
not smothering it, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Well, I'd agree too in the pace in with discipleship groups. I would say where they take off the most, like if you put it in a college ministry with a disciple making culture, I mean, it spreads like wildfire. Exactly like
Mhm.
you said, like you're and so because they have the time, they've got the zeal, and and they're usually in a high relational environment. And I think one other piece is just as we're talking, I think especially for if they have a regional church or maybe like not the typical college town, sometimes you may never see the kingdom impact that you make because every 4 years college students go out. And
Right.
that's what makes it so prime for multiplication and for movements, like, because ultimately, I think what we wanna do is we wanna see it all come to fruition. Your greatest ministry may be that you are actually a launching pad, that you are sending out disciple makers to, all across the nation, and you have them for a season. And so some of the greatest ministry that you have as a church, you may not know until we go to heaven one day, but like God is using that and will use it not maybe only in your town or your city, but across the world. Hey, church leader, I hope these podcast episodes and the Movement Ready Church book that Robbie and I have written are helping you get disciple making started in your church. What I'm excited for in the next season is that we're taking the Movement Ready Church book to your church. We are doing one-day workshops where myself or one of the navigators on our Replicate team come on site to your church and work with your staff and leaders to take the principles of this book and to put it into action. What I love about this workshop is that we're not going to do just trainings from the book, but we are actually going to help you create something personal for your church. We're going to give every one of your leaders some essential training to grow as disciple makers and to be a developer of leaders. Secondly, we're going to give you a personalized assessment of your disciple making culture. And then thirdly, we're going to create a 1 year focus and a first step to get started so that you can see your movement begin. So all you have to do is go to movementreadytraining.com to get more information and to get started. You'll see it's pretty simple. Let's jump on a call together. Let's create a personalized training day for your church, and then let our team take care of the rest. And we will bring the Movement Ready Church to your church. So just go to movementreadychurchtraining.com and let's get your movement started. Now, let's get back to our conversation together. Okay, let's take a little different direction. There's the two things that you and I connect over often: college ministry and then multiplication. And
Mm.
so every time though that we talk about multiplication, you always are coming back to, in the best way, evangelism. And I hear you when you share and you train and we talk, you really, there's this deep conviction that if the church, if believers could get personal evangelism right, like that's really kind of that missing piece often for movements to take off. Could you tell us a little bit more of just kind of that role and why that's such an important part for you? I know it's an important part of being a believer, but tell us a
Right.
little bit more of just kind of your conviction and what you see missing in the church today around evangelism.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, honestly, I see a lot of, even in our disciple making circles, the kind of people that
Yeah.
would listen to this podcast, I see a lot of dead end discipleship. And
Mm,
that's it is what it sounds like. It's Christians meeting with Christians to make them more Christian, and they just rearrange people into different small groups, and they call that spiritual multiplication. True spiritual multiplication needs to break out and reach non-Christians, and that's where you really see the spiritual multiplication take off.
yeah.
Discipleship without evangelism is not discipleship, it's recycleship. you know so it's
Oh, there
just
it is.
like getting in. And my buddy Brian Zuniga said that. But really, so avoid the dead end discipleship, and that's really what separates healthy discipleship from ingrown discipleship. You think about it, evangelism fixes everything. I say
Yeah.
that a little bit tongue in cheek, but it helps your prayer life. It helps you depend and study the word more. It makes your scripture memory sharper. It makes you want to live with more integrity. And so it really is kind of the thing that jackhammers the spiritual lethargy in a person's life. Once they start sharing the gospel with real life non-Christians, that's the one thing, that and scripture memory are the two best accelerators to discipleship that I've ever seen. When you get
Yeah.
someone memorizing key passage of scripture and actually sharing the gospel with lost people, those are two things that make your discipleship that much more healthy and vibrant and
Yeah.
effective.
So, I mean, totally agree with you. That idea of like of evangelism being such an accelerant for spiritual growth, and obviously, like as church leaders and everything, like we all would amen it. So, why is it lag? Why is it so often neglected, or maybe just a minimal component when we think about churches and their equipping strategies?
That's great. Yeah, I think a lot of people have misconceptions, a lot of misconceptions about evangelism, and one of them is that it's these days it's only progress process evangelism and not proclamation. And so,
Mm,
you know what I mean by that? Process evangelism is you take someone that's a -6 and you
yeah,
slowly work with them to get them down to maybe a -2, or you know, and that's kind of the Ingle scale idea. And a lot of people, there's a lot of books and a lot of things that teach that's the only way to do evangelism. But what we found, or even working with college students on college campuses, there are many that need that process. And there's great resources and groups like the Alpha Course and other kind of tools that you can use to help people do process evangelism. But there are a ton of people that are maybe right now a -1. Jesus said, the harvest is plentiful, the laborers are few. The problem is not with the harvest. The problem is a lack of laborers. And so we want to equip people to see that there are people right now in our communities that if a laborer loved them, prayed for them, and shared the gospel with them, they would come to Christ. And so
yeah,
on the podcast with my dad, the For the Harvest podcast, we talk a lot about discovery evangelism, is that God is sovereignly working in a lot of people's lives in our communities. And as church leaders and often church planners and collegiate leaders, our job is to discover people that God is already working in. So I think getting that idea, it's not either or, it's both and. So we're sowing broadly with the gospel. We're praying for open doors, but we're also jiggling handles. We're taking initiative, you know what I mean? And we're trying to you know, make it hard to go to hell in our
yeah,
community. So
yeah.
there's all the answer is not either or, it's all of the above when it comes to
Yeah.
evangelism, you know.
I
So
love that
large group.
visual, like, the jiggle the handles, like, because it's
Yeah,
again, you're looking for, like, man, where are there open doors? And often we want the open door that's like, "Hey, it's right here," you know? And I don't think that's really like, often what it is the open door is a door that we've gotta jiggle the handle, you know? Like, we've gotta
start
look
the
and say, "Man,
conversation.
start the conversation." And I think often what it and I'll speak for myself, what I want is the open door that's already wide open. I want the person that's like, "I'm ready to be a believer. Would you just tell me how?" Like, I would love that.
Yeah.
But what it often looks like is the door's open, you just still have to, like, open it. It's not
Right, right.
locked, and so it's good. I love that.
So, yeah, when I moved out of college into the real world, I worked some normal jobs for oil
Yeah.
and gas lease brokerage company, and I was working full time for some different real, you know, regular jobs before I went into ministry. God led me to these three habits to develop these three habits. I call them the three habits for everyday evangelism, and they're based on Colossians 4:2-6. And it really is, it's a way to make evangelism a spiritual discipline in your life.
Mm,
And so
mm,
it's super simple. Actually, I'm enamored pretty soon after this podcast is released. We have an ebook called The Three Habits for Everyday
mm.
Evangelism that'll be on the North American Mission Board website. And it's written not just for students, it's for anyone. But really, the three habits are praying daily for opportunities and taking advantage of those. Number two is creating an impact list of 5 to 10 people and then work through the prayer, care, share strategy. And then the third one is just spend time hanging out with non Christians.
Mm,
And those three habits, I promise you, you start doing those three habits, it's just a matter of time before you start having more opportunities to share your faith. Even that
yeah,
first one, praying for opportunities, that's a dangerous prayer.
that's
You
right,
start praying
that's
that,
right.
God might just give it to you. And so we actually encourage people to create accountability questions based on those three habits, because a lot of times you don't get what you expect, you get what you inspect. That's
That's right.
discipleship 101. And so each week in your discipleship group, you could say, hey, how's it going for the people on your impact list, the people you're praying for?
Yeah, I love that.
How's it going praying for opportunities? Did you get any opportunities to share your faith? And so over time, you're kind of taking advantage of the opportunities that God gives along the
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, I love that. Like in our discipleship group model, that accountability we build in that, like, who are you praying for? How are you investing in them? And it is that accountability of, man, you're praying daily, and then you're talking about it with other believers weekly of like, hey, did you connect with them? Did you invest in that relationship? Like, and so that idea of having accountability and talking about it, and I like you call it, you're talking about it as a habit, like, and so I think that's so, like, it's something you have to build the muscle for, you have to grow into.
Mm.
You know, there's one other thing connecting our worlds again. Fuel and the Flame had one of the most influential things for me early on around evangelism. And I hope you didn't remove this. If you did, don't say it on the podcast.
Okay, okay.
But it's talked about evangelism is often seen as the capstone discipline, or the capstone thing for a believer, and so it's something you have to graduate into in your spiritual journey. But what Steve said early on was, that actually following Jesus is like wet cement for the first 90 days.
Hmm.
What
Hmm.
you experience in the first 90 days sets what you believe, what you expect to be the Christian life. So the first 90 days, if all we do is just go to church and we don't actually like read the Bible together and practice everything, then that's what it looks like. Well, often I see evangelism treated as something you graduate into. It's like 301, 401, 501 of the faith. And what this just aha for me was like, if we don't do evangelism from day one, we're not actually solidifying it in for people to say, man, this is just the way that we do life. This is just the Christian lifestyle. So, curious, even early on, like, what are other practical ways that you guys are beginning to build, like, equip evangelism in churches? We got the 3 habits of personal evangelism. What else is being fruitful in churches as you think about equipping around evangelism?
Oh, I love what you said about new believers. They're the best people in the world to share their faith, right? Because they
Yes,
have the most non-Christian friends. They have the most raw passion for
that's
Christ,
right.
and they don't know any better. They don't
That's
know
so
that
true.
most people don't share their faith. And so if you can get that DNA, like you said, the wet cement, yeah, that's still in the book. So the wet cement thing is still in the book. But really, we see that. Ask if you have a new believer, start from day one or day two and help them make that impact list and say, hey, who else do you know?
Mm,
Even invite them into your discipleship group. So let's
yeah,
imagine you set up one tool we use a lot is called the gospel appointment, which it is what it sounds like. It's just an appointment to share the gospel. But so imagine you set up this appointment, you lead this person to Christ, and they come to Christ. We had a guy named Cody on our staff in Chico that did that, led a student to Christ. First meeting, this guy name's Manny. Cody led Manny to Christ and asked Manny, "Hey, who else do you know that might want to hear this or might be interested in this?"
yeah,
So Manny texted Noah, and the next day, Manny and Cody sat down with Noah and led Noah to Christ, like the very next day.
yes,
And then they asked Noah that question. He invited Ryan. Ryan came to our dodgeball tournament, and a different student leader set up a gospel appointment with him and led him to Christ. And Ryan had grown up in church, but got sucked into the Chico State party scene. And he said when he heard the gospel, it was like a sledgehammer just wrecked his heart. And
mm,
now he's leading a ministry at UC Santa Cruz, helping lead a ministry at UC Santa Cruz, seeing dozens of people come to Christ on one of the most difficult campuses. And that's all
I
from
love it.
one new believer.
Right,
So one, that's a great idea is always a new believer can often become a person of peace. Missionaries use this strategy. We were just in India with the movement leader, and we asked him how he got it started. He said every person he personally led to Christ, he immediately went with them to their immediate family and friends and sat down, let the person share their testimony, and then he shared the gospel. And often they would just start a discovery group. Gospel of
yeah,
John, basic questions around just one chapter of the Gospel of John. And so that's a great thing. I call it the invite yourself over principle, especially with
yeah,
young adults. You can do this is you may have an opportunity to disciple a young adult, but ask them who their friends are, and they might be able to let you help lead a discovery group with their friends. They host it, they invite their friends, but you help lead the study and eventually kind of work yourself out of a job and let them lead the group. But that's a great thing for
Uh,
ministry leaders
yeah.
is don't just think about individuals, think about groups. We're seeing this is something we're seeing in the revival. We're seeing whole friend groups come to Christ, like whole chunks of a fraternity come to Christ at the same time. Whole groups, like one football team, a guy we reached on the football team, we trained him in some of these tools. He brought about 20 guys to come to our church. Out of those 20, 8 of them got saved and baptized. Just because we equipped one guy, birds of a feather flock together. And so, especially with young people, you want to just start praying not only for individuals, but for whole groups to come to
Yeah.
Christ.
And again, that idea of the concrete is like if evangelism isn't a core discipline, it is not a spiritual discipline and habit that we're building as the spiritual formation process from day one. All of that zeal and those relationships, it wanes with every day that we don't continue to connect them into their relationships and into the lifestyle that God's called them to.
Mhm.
Like I love that. Couple of things I want to in just a second. I want to kind of next steps and just any resources. There's about 1,000 ways you can find Paul, and he's got gold like that in every one of them. Couple of things that I love. What you're talking about evangelism and zeal is one of the things that people wonder with our discipleship group model is what about evangelism? And I'm like, it's built in as a discipline that we hold people accountable to in D groups. And I think
Mhm.
that is one of the things that I love about like anytime I'm with a pastor who has an evangelistic heart, I'm like, let's build that passion into a model of discipleship groups where every one of your people, the moment they follow Jesus, they get 3 or 4 other believers that hold them accountable to an evangelistic lifestyle. And when you create a space for accountability and training or equipping, and then multiplication, when you do that, what you're going to see the evangelistic zeal you have as an individual, you're going to see that multiplied across your people. And so
Yes.
I think that's why you and I get excited because, like, again, we call it disciple making. It's evangelism and discipleship together, so that
Yes.
we are bringing those together to see that movement. So, two resources on our end, and then I want to hear what we can send them to your way. We'll put in the show notes. The discipleship group model that we do, which has an evangelistic component in it, but then also an evangelistic group, which is very much like what you talked about. How do you go back and lead this with a group of people?
Mhm.
This has been something over the last 5 years, and it's been huge. Like you're saying, Paul, is like sometimes leading a discipleship group, it's not the season because you're surrounded by people who are lost and don't know Jesus. And so
Yes.
what if you go out and that's your kingdom circle as we talk about? It's not discipling or what recycleship as we said earlier. It's not
Yeah.
continuing to disciple those that are already in the church, but it's actually going out and reaching those that are lost. So those are two from Replicates In that you'll see there as resources. Paul, tell us a little bit more other resources, ways that we can find you if they want more of college and evangelism. Where do they go?
Yeah, great question. I also want to give a shout out for the book. Kind of one of the first books Robbie Gallaty wrote was
Appreciate
the
it.
Growing Up book. We still use that Growing Up book personally with the students that we disciple in our discipleship groups. And that's a great one to instill a lot of these
Yes.
values we're trying to reproduce. So I love that tool. I have about if you go to my Instagram and Linktree and all that kind of stuff, we can put in the show notes.
Yep.
We have about 50 different articles and reproducible PDFs that are kind of A to Z on college ministry. But if there was someone that was interested in starting or they're already in collegiate ministry specifically, we have a comprehensive coaching network that's free for any collegiate leaders that NAM
Love it.
sponsors that we run
Right.
every fall semester. So it's a combination of multiple Zoom calls and then an in-person gathering at North American Mission Board headquarters. So
Nice.
that's probably if you want to get the most comprehensive coaching and training on collegiate ministry, that's the thing to look at is the Collegiate Coaching Network. But we also have an online course. It's called Creating a Culture of Evangelism. But on
Mm.
the first session, I say the key to creating evangelistic momentum is disciple making. so,
There you
so
go.
really,
There you
that's the key to evangelism. And so it's both and. And then we also have some ebooks at NAM that we just published on collegiate ministry and some other books that, and keep an eye out for that 3 Habits for Every Evangelism
Yeah.
ebook. that will be published at NAM. And then we have a bunch of other resources as well. But yeah, especially on the area of evangelism, like I mentioned, we have a how-to guide for that gospel appointment tool, which is a
Mm,
super simple way to just intentional process of personal evangelism. Kind of mixes the best practices of initiative evangelism and relational evangelism. It's kind of in
good,
between there. So check
good.
out gospel appointments as well.
Love it. And if you missed any of those, they're all in the show notes with
Right.
hyperlinks. So you're,
Right.
I'm like, and so like I said, there's all kind of ways you can connect with Paul. Paul, grateful for you, man. Love, again, I always love sharing stories from the college days and just the multiplication, disciple making passion we share. Looking forward to seeing you soon, man. Thanks for the conversation today.
Great. I love it. Appreciate it.